Make sure y'all stay on point with
The Puncher's Point. We are right back with you guys. Back-to-back days, consecutive days with the Puncher's Point. And this time, like we said in the last episode, we are going to be breaking down Chris Billam-Smith versus Zurdo Ramírez. Zurdo Ramírez comes out with the win. That is another prediction correct by the Puncher's Point. You're welcome. Now, overall, he beats him by unanimous decision. Breezy was pretty close. He said split decision, but Zurdo came out on top. And he is now the WBO and the WBA Cruiserweight Champion. And overall, this was a very, very good fight, in my opinion. I think it had a lot of back and forth action. I mean, obviously, you can tell by like the bug on Chris Billam-Smith's eye. That was one thing right there. And y'all who thought that the Amanda Serrano cut was disgusting, this one's even worse with Chris Billam-Smith's eye. But overall, let's just kick it right off. Let's go strategy grade. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to pass it on to Breezy before I give my strategy. How did you have this fight graded as far as a strategy standpoint?
7. And the reason why I say 7, it's kind of like I said in the breakdown. It was going to be a lot of inside work. It was going to be a lot of inside fighting. And yes, to a degree, I did see that coming, but I feel like there was a bit in the inside, a little too much. And because it was in the inside a little too much, it was some rounds where it was a bunch of swing rounds where it was like, who do you get this round to? And I'm going to go further on throughout the podcast and let y'all know how I actually had this fight going. But it just seems like they was just in there to trying to get one up. You hit me in the inside, I'm gonna hit you in the inside. You rock me in the inside, I'm gonna rock you. It just seemed like it was just a whole big, fight where it was like, hey, let's see who stands out in the inside. Now, that's not to say that they didn't have moments where they didn't fight in the outside, but it just seemed like they were just so hell bent on being on the inside because it's like I'm gonna be real with you. Watching this fight, I don't really think any of them should be in the inside way too much because they both take too many punches. Let's just go ahead and get that out the way. But one thing I did notice about Zurdo, he kind of took his little time. He kind of like didn't start taking things into consideration. He kind of didn't start letting his hands go and start putting those punches together to about about second round. I guess he was trying to really see where like Chris Billam was at, trying to kind of like gauge and see how he was going to approach him. So I like how Zurdo took his, calm, steady, study down approach to Chris Billam-Smith. And as far as Chris Billam-Smith, I kind of figured he was going to try to bring the pace towards Zurdo because Zurdo does have moments where he's tend to be aggressive. So I guess he decided to say that, hey, I'm going to try to lean this fight and basically be the controlling factor in this fight, which I'm not mad at. So honestly, it wasn't bad. It's not a bad game plan, but at the same time, it's also not the most smartest game plan. And because it's not also the smartest game plan, but also the most effective game plan at the same time, it leads me to give it to a 7.
I think I'll agree with that. I think I'll give it a 7. The reason why I give it a 7 is because I feel like this was more offensively than defensively. However, if I had to give one the edge, I would probably say Zurdo. For me, what I really liked about Zurdo was when they were on the inside, Zurdo did a great job of slipping a punch. And basically, if you notice, for most of the fight when they were on the inside, Zurdo stayed low. If you notice, like he would always attack the body any chance he got. And when Chris Billam-Smith would throw a punch, he would either take the punch and respond back, or he would slip it and he would counterpunch him. What I really liked about Zurdo, though, in this fight was there were times where Zurdo would hit him with a 2-3 punch combination, and then he would kind of switch the angle on Chris Billam-Smith before Chris Billam-Smith had a chance to respond. And I feel like that is the reason why the judges swayed a lot of those swing rounds to Zurdo Ramírez, because there were many times where Zurdo Ramírez would cut that angle on Billam-Smith, and Billam-Smith didn't have a good vision or a good aim to, land that counter punch. Now, what I really liked about Chris Billam-Smith was, even in my opinion, I had a 116, 112 Zurdo Ramírez or 115, 113 Zurdo Ramírez. Either way, I had Zurdo winning this fight. But what I really liked about Chris Billam-Smith did a really good job of kind of establishing the jab, and there were times where that jab was going through, the left hand was going through. The problem I had with Chris Billam-Smith was Chris Billam-Smith, once Zurdo really started putting the pressure on him, what did he do? He did exactly what Chris Billam-Smith does in those types of situations. He started leaning against the ropes, and Zurdo Ramírez did a better job of even cutting that ring on Chris Billam-Smith. Now, Chris Billam-Smith, there, in my opinion, this fight, like we said, these two were very similar fighters. I feel like what they were doing were kind of mirroring each other. They were relying on a bunch of uppercuts. They were relying on swings. But I feel like, again, what we said in the prediction episode was fairly accurate. Whatever Chris Billam-Smith could do, Zurdo Ramirez just did better. I mean, every skill that Chris Billam-Smith showcased in that ring, I just think Zurdo outskilled him. Now, overall, I do got to give it a 7. I feel like Zurdo really stick with the game plan. I feel like Chris Billam-Smith kind of slipped away from it. If there was one thing that Zurdo could have did better at was, I feel like Zurdo, there were times where he would take punches instead of slipping them. I really wish he kind of took a boxer's approach to this fight and then picked the right times to be aggressive. I feel like he would have had a more dominant win. And as far as Chris Billam-Smith, I like that he established the jab. I liked how he would basically use his left hand and he would come in with the right hand. And when they were in the inside, there were times where Chris Billam-Smith definitely got the best of him with those hooks. But I feel like overall, I just feel like Zurdo was the aggressor, and him being the aggressor forced Chris Billam-Smith to be in tough positions like the ropes and forced Zurdo Ramirez to kind of, shift and cut angles to where Chris Billam-Smith couldn't counter. So I agree with you. I give it a 7. Now, before we get to excitement, Breezy, how did you score the fight? And overall, from there, just go straight to your excitement grade.
All right. I had this fight as a draw. Believe it or not, y'all. And I gave Zurdo Ramirez rounds 2, 3, 4, 7, 9, and 12. I gave Billam-Smith 1, 5, 6, 8, 10, and 11. And yeah, before y'all ask, oh, Breezy, why you have it as a draw? Like I said a while ago, a lot of those rounds was too many swing rounds. And that's one of the most key things. And look, I won't say that I don't like it, because at the end of the day, it's boxing, it's the sweet science. But that's the reason why I say a lot of times when fighters tend to pick all these rounds where they want to be in the inside, just trying to pick each other apart. It's one of the most hardest things ever, is to try to grade a fight or decide a round of a fighter when they're both in the inside, just going blow for blow, blow for blow, blow for blow for blow for blow. And it's like, now you got one guy taking the early part of the fight, and then you got the other guy taking the rest of half of the fight. So that's why I don't really not too much, when it comes to inside fighting. But as far as the excitement, I gave it a 5. Look, I'm gonna tell y'all why. Hold on. I saw Mario. Hold on. I felt like, I don't know. It just seemed like, aside from the cut and the constant catching each other with shots, it just seemed like they were just in the inside, and it looked like they gassed out early, if you ask me. And it's when because they were so in the inside so much, just hitting each other, they basically punched themselves out, and they basically almost nearly gassed out. And because it did, it's like it kind of caused the fight to slow down a little bit, even though they was catching each other at times. But it just seemed like the fight kind of slowed down a little bit. And that tends to happen when the fighters get gassed, obviously. But I mean, that's why I say it wasn't much more anything to the fight besides being on the inside, breaking each other down, trying to go blow for blow, and constant, putting their head in and putting their face all on each other, leaning all on each other, catching each other with shots in the body, up to the head. And they did this for so many rounds, and that's probably why I have it a draw right now. But as far as excitement of the actual fight itself, I gotta give it a 5. I feel like I expected it to be higher. It didn't meet up to the expectations that I thought it would, basically.
I disagree. I got to give excitement an 8, honestly. And the reason why I find this fight so very exciting is because they were both on the inside, and as far as a strategy standpoint, you could kind of knock it over there. But as far as the excitement standpoint, I like it when two fighters are in the pocket, they're willing to meet in the middle of the ring. And overall, I just like to see them go blow for blow, There were times where in the first round, Zurdo got clipped, and he got clipped by a good punch from Chris Billam-Smith. And Zurdo constantly, just targeting Chris Billam-Smith's eye, basically coming, kind of keeping a low guard. And when Chris Billam-Smith would fire, kind of countering or taking the punch and giving it right back. Those are the types of fights that I like to see. Overall, I mean, I got to give it an 8. Do I think it was as exciting as Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano? No. Do I think it was as exciting as Barrios and Ramos? No. Usyk and Fury? No. But I do think it is an 8. And the reason why is because nobody was running around. Nobody was running away. I liked how they were both in the middle of the ring, and they were both like, we're going to go blow for blow. We're both similar fighters. And we're going to see who can do this better. that to me is why I would give the excitement an 8. Now, overall, I'm shocked over how you said the draw. I can see it though. I still would have it 116, 112. I can see it, to be honest with you, but the reason and as far as Breezy's perspective, it's a lot of them doing the same thing. So when two guys are doing the same thing, yeah, you can look at it as a swing round. And obviously in live time, we really can't see the stats when we're judging. The judges can't see the stats. They can't go, all right, this round's over. This guy landed 5 out of 10, while this guy landed 3 out of 12, or something stupid like that. They can't. You're not getting live stats as the fight progresses, or else judging would be easy. However, I can see why Breezy would consider it a draw. When you got two guys in the middle just swinging, you have some swing rounds where it could go to either guy. For me, the reason why I would give it to Zurdo is because I believe in a lot of these rounds, Zurdo established defense a lot better than Chris Billam-Smith did. And Zurdo kind of handled getting punched a lot better than what Chris Billam-Smith would. There were a couple times where Chris Billam-Smith would have him against the ropes, but overall, it just seemed like whenever Zurdo would pressure, Chris Billam-Smith just relied on leaning on those ropes, and he pressured him to back up against those ropes and would cut those angles. I feel like Chris Billam-Smith wasn't doing that as well. And so for me, that's why I would give it to Zurdo Ramirez. But as far as excitement, I mean, I gotta give it an 8. Now, the stakes. What was on the line? And overall, how did it kind of, live up to what was on the line? So as far as stakes, were the stakes high? And if so, did they kind of live up to what the stakes were? So on a scale of 1 to 10, Breezy, how would you grade the stakes of this fight?
I give it an 8 on the stakes. I mean, because here's the thing. What was the outcome of this fight? The winner faces who? Jai Opetaia. And because these are two fighters who have similar styles, and not only that too, but due to what they brought along with the fight, all the way up to now, and then you seeing how far it went, and then as far as the constant pressurizing fight, and then you look at Jai Opetaia style, and then it's like, okay, so whether Zurdo win or Chris Billam-Smith wins, it's still gonna be a good matchup because these both have a similar style and are both gonna try to bring some kind of inside pocket brawl style to somebody like a Jai Opetaia. So either way, the stakes would have been high regardless, no matter who won, because whichever one, it would have been an exciting fight with Jai Opetaia. And to me, I feel like that alone kind of raises it enough because because me and you both, we think very highly of Jai Opetaia. And I know we both view Zurdo Ramírez and Chris Billam-Smith on a high level too. So it's like just that alone, I feel like that pushes it up to 8. So yeah, I give it about an 8.
I agree with that. I gotta go an 8 too. And the reason why I'm gonna go an 8 is because either way you would have looked at it, even if Chris Billam-Smith would have won this fight, either way, I mean, the winner gets Jai Opetaia. Now, there is another champion in that boxing division, and his name, I believe, is Nonair. But nobody talks about Nonair. So obviously, we're just gonna assume, or Norair, excuse me, Norair. Nobody talks about Norair. He's the WBC cruiserweight champion. I find it pretty crazy that nobody talks about him because the WBC belt, in my opinion, is the most important belt in boxing. But with Gilberto Ramirez winning this fight, WBO and WBA champion, and then he's probably gonna face the winner of Jai Opetaia. Jai Opetaia, they'll probably give him a stupid mandatory, and then hopefully he can end up fighting the rare. But overall, either way, no matter who won this, the stakes were still gonna be high, and overall, it was just gonna put the person into a title unification match. So I agree, 8, and I think it definitely heavily affects the cruiserweight division. Now, does this mean we're gonna put Gilberto Ramirez on the top 10 pound for pound list? Most likely not. Maybe if he beats Jai Opetaia, he gets put on the pound for pound list. And I'll even go as far as saying when those two fight, that will have higher stakes than when he fought Chris Billam-Smith. And the reason why is because I believe whoever wins that fight will get put onto the top 10 pound for pound. I mean, you got holding 3 out of 4 belts in that division. It's a unification match. I mean, both of them are very, very good fighters. I feel like they're kind of underlooked sometimes. Whoever wins that fight, I believe, would be put on the pound for pound list. Now, as far as stakes, I would consider it an 8. Then you go to the impact, and obviously it impacts the cruiserweight division, but the overall impact where would you grade it, Breezy, on a scale of 1 to 10 as far as how this impacts whether it's the cruiserweight division, boxing, overall? What would you say the impact grade is of Chris Billam-Smith versus Zurdo Ramírez?
Call me crazy, but I'm gonna give it a 9 because we haven't had and I'm gonna say this: we haven't had this much action in the cruiserweight division in a pretty long time. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, the last time we could really say we had some going in the cruiserweight division was what Usyk was there, and that's been a very long time. So the fact that we got all the way up to now, where we see who gets to face Jai Opetaia now, and then and that impacts the cruiserweight division because now we get to have all these different kind of matchups. So I give it about 9.
I give it an 8. And yeah, overall, the reason why I give it an 8 because it definitely affects the cruiserweight division. Now you can start making some title, you can make more title unification bouts, and honestly, if you really think about it, I mean, most likely Gilberto Ramirez is going to get Jai Opetaia, and obviously it's going to be for a unification bout. Call me crazy, but I feel like cruiserweight is aiming for those unification bouts a lot quicker than a lot of other divisions are. Obviously, when we look at these other divisions, there's cruiserweight fighters, but they'll basically, they'll defend their belt, and then they'll defend their belt another 2 or 3 times before they get to a unification title match. In this division, the unification matches I feel like are going to be happening a lot quicker than what people expect. You know what I'm saying? And in my opinion, there was 4 guys. Now you bump it down to 3. In my opinion, it was Jai Opetaia, Narer, Gilberto Ramirez, and Chris Billam-Smith. Now, all of a sudden, Chris Billam-Smith gets beat. You put it down to 3. Maybe they'll have a rematch. Who knows? But now, all of a sudden, you're down to 3. Alexander Usyk now said that he might come back up to cruiserweight, go back down to cruiserweight to try to get that belt. Do I think he's going to do that? Absolutely not. However, as of right now, you're at 3 guys. Narer, Jai Opetaia, Gilberto Ramirez. And overall, because it's surrounded by those 3 guys, that's why I have to give it an 8 instead of anything higher. Because it's not as stacked of a division as 140. It's not as stacked a division as 154 pounds. So that's the reason why I got to give it an 8, because everybody else is not going to basically equal them unless Bivol decides to go up to 200 or Artur Beterbiev decides to go up there, and then you really can start kind of pushing the action and picking up the pace. But I don't think that's going to happen either, because 175 to 200 is kind of that's a 25 pound, that's kind of a 25 pound difference, and that's hard to make 25 pounds opposed to the other ones where you can go up 5 to 10 pounds and basically go to another division. It's hard to go from 175 pounds to 200, which is why, I mean, you got to give Gilberto Ramirez a lot of credit. He did it. You know what I'm saying? So, and same thing with Usyk. Usyk did it by going up to heavyweight, but I just feel like in this specific instance, you're down to 3 guys, so it's not as stacked as a division as every other division, which is why I would have to give it an 8. Now, with that being said, I got the fight grade. It is a 7.5 that is ranked 3rd. That is going to be behind Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano, Jesse Rodriguez versus Pedro Guevara, and I messed up. It's actually number 4. So Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano is number 1. Jesse Rodriguez, Pedro Guevara is number 2. Bakram Murtazalia versus Tim Tszyu is number 3. And then they're right below them, and then right under them would be Jaron Ennis versus Karen Trukajan. But yeah, 7.5 is where this is at. That's placed in 4th place, and overall, the difference of opinions obviously would kind of drop it down and everything like that, or bring it up depending on how anybody looks at it. You could look at it as it was just a boring fight, 2 guys punching each other, no strategy. You could look at it as it was 2 guys in the middle of the ring going at it. Depends how you look at it overall. So I feel like the mix in opinions is the reason why it would be put at 4th. And honestly, depending on how you look at it, I think that's a good spot for it, is at number 4, because the impact and the stakes we agreed on, and I believe that's justified. So overall, yeah, I think 4th place is a good place to put it. Now, last but not least, what is next for Gilberto Ramirez? And obviously, we said Jai Opetaia. Does Chris Billam-Smith, does he try to go for the rematch? Does he go after Narer? What do you think should be next for both guys, Breezy?
Probably Gilberto. I don't think Narer is going to want to fight the guy that just took a loss. I think if anything, he wants to be closer to getting all those belts. And you get no closer to that by beating a guy that Gilberto already beat. So you're going to beat the guy that the guy you should be beating already beat, which would be a long process in itself. So best thing he can do is, I guess, fight another tune-up or stay active and basically shoot for the Gilberto rematch. I mean, could it happen? Yes. Will it happen anytime soon? Probably not, because those guys are looking to get those belts quick and ASAP. But, you can't fully shoot it down. So I will say for Billam-Smith is to get that Gilberto rematch. And obviously, for Gilberto, it's Jai Opetaia.
So for Gilberto, obviously, Jai Opetaia, I agree. That's the fight you can make. You could go down the Norrare route and give him that fight, but I do agree. I think it should be Jai Opetaia. Chris Billam-Smith, I got a nice little matchup in mind. Now, there's obviously the top three, like I talked about. However, there is one guy in this division that I would actually be pretty interested to see, and I wouldn't mind seeing Chris Billam-Smith versus Briedis. Briedis is the only guy that gave Jai Opetaia a good fight. And Briedis actually defeated Norrare. He beat him by unanimous decision. So Briedis is like on the cusp. He's not part. There's three guys right now, but Briedis is on the cusp. So I think that Chris Billam-Smith, if he can go have a fight with Briedis and he can beat Briedis, that puts him right back in the title contention. And he could get a fight against Norrare, or he can get the winner of Gilberto versus Jai Opetaia. And he can make a case for, coming back on the come up and climb. So overall, yeah, no, I would like to see Billam-Smith versus Briedis, and they're both part of their zone. I think that's definitely something you can make happen. They're both part of Riyadh season as well, so I think it's an easy fight to make. You could put it on one of the undercards or like a co-main event of one of the cards, depending on like who's on that card and who's fighting. But overall, I would like to see that card, and yeah, I got to see Gilberto versus Jai Opetaia. Gilberto, I mean, the only guy he ever lost to was Dmitry Bivol. And Bivol was, again, top 10 pound for pound fighter, went through a war with Artur Beterbiev, is the only person that actually took him to his limits and pushed him to 12 rounds. So he lost to one of the very best in the sport. So I think Gilberto is definitely worthy of having a fight with Jai Opetaia. And I'm not going to give my prediction on who will win that fight, Jai Opetaia, but y'all going to have to tune into the podcast to figure out why. Anyway, overall, those would be the two fights I would like to see those guys have. And I feel like it's two fights that is going to be fun and entertaining. And it's going to be a fight that will bring Chris Billam-Smith back up. And it will also be a fight that could potentially solidify Gilberto as one of the best cruiserweights, if not the best. So those are the fights I would like to see. Now, Breezy, I need you to wrap this up.
I know what the deal is. The Puncher's Point. We're live every week, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, sometimes Tuesdays, sometimes Thursdays, sometimes Saturdays for fight nights, and Sundays for post-fight reactions. Y'all know what to do is check out the post-fight reactions and breakdowns on the Puncher's Point. Make sure y'all stay tuned in for the podcast exclusives on the podcast app. Stop being lazy. Watch those. We drop those on the podcast app, especially and only for the exclusive ones that listen to the app. But to not keep y'all up, y'all know what the deal is. It's the Puncher's Point. Make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point. What's good, y'all? Y'all know what it is. It's the Puncher's Point. We live every week. Make sure y'all tune in with us. Make sure y'all like, comment, subscribe. And y'all already know what to do. Make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point.